Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War news update for the 14th of May 2024. I had my COVID jab yesterday, so today I'm unable to move very well at all. It's really affected my multiple sclerosis and my brain is not working very well. So just there are my caveats for all of today's videos. I've got a lot of stuff to do and I still need to finish a mapping. There was a massive mapping update yesterday with regard to some overdue changes to, I forgot to do some, to finish off the deep state map changes previously. And so that was thrown on last night. I've got to finish a mapping for Syriac maps to throw onto the mapping update. And then I'll get that out next because I obviously missed it yesterday just because it was such a, I was doing it for a long time yesterday, but then it was 1 o'clock and I was like, I've got to go to bed. So there is that. And the other thing I need to say before I give you the news to begin with is that there are scammers about, the people pretending to be me, apparently. I don't know the details of this, but if you are approached in messages where someone with my avatar is asking you for something, I will never ask you for stuff in comments and whatnot. Just assume, unless I'm like banging on about something particularly boring concerning some minor point to do with the war in Ukraine, then assume that it is a scammer. I do apologize about that. These seem to be fairly common at the moment, where sort of pictures and avatars, profiles are cloned. But let me know if that has happened to you. I don't know any details other than it is apparently happening. Apologies on behalf of, I don't know, the universe or something. Right, let's go to the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. Very high figures again in a number of categories. We have one aircraft on here, and that, well, we're going to talk about two losses from yesterday. I sometimes forget to talk about the aircraft losses because they're quite rare, and so I will tell you that they have been lost, but sometimes miss out mentioning it on the list. Anyway, 1,400 personnel lost. That is an incredibly high number. Of course, that would have broken the record if the record hadn't been broken yesterday. So the record is now 1,780. 1,400 is still an exceptionally large number. 11 tanks is a pretty hefty loss for the Russians. 43 armored personnel vehicles is a very high number there in that category. 28 artillery systems. And then we have one anti-aircraft warfare system, 29 vehicles and fuel tanks, slightly lower in that category, 6 pieces of special equipment. So that's what has happened. I think there are claims that the Russians are losing a lot in the Kharkiv direction, but actually when you count up the visually confirmed losses at the moment, it looks like Ukraine has lost a couple more than the Russians, though the claims are that the Russians are, as I say, losing a lot. But again, that might be more personnel than equipment. I think the Russians are coming across the border to a fair degree on foot and doing those assaults by foot, possibly to protect their vehicles, possibly because they don't have as many vehicles as they would like to have. So when we look at the Andrew Perpetual loss stats, this is from yesterday, so there's another one to go through as well. This is much more in line with what Ukraine were previously experiencing and what they'd like. We have had a number of days of parity, and in fact the one from yesterday, oops, that's in the wrong order. The one from yesterday is somewhat closer to parity, not quite though, but especially if you take the decoys out and that unknown at the bottom is probably a 2-to-1 ratio. But this one, as you can see from sort of 24, probably 48 hours ago, is, well, I don't know, 10-to-1. Something like that, but it's one of those days where not many Ukrainian losses are on there. I don't know what that one at the bottom is. I wonder if it's been cut off actually, and I won't be able to tell now because the daily sheet would have been replaced. So actually, this loss sheet here won't be the same. This will be from, yeah, that's the one we're just about to look at. So that's unfortunate because it looks like, oh no, he posted the wrong image by accident. Here it is. Okay, so there we go. So actually it's not nearly as beneficial for the Ukrainians. We can see, I mean, it's still pretty good, just under a 3-to-1 ratio. Better considering, as I was mentioning, the ratios haven't been as good recently. So what do we have for the Ukrainian losses? We've got some artillery, nothing particularly high value there. A couple of tanks, again, likewise. YPR 765, that's an M113 variant. Got an FV104 Samaritans, that's a UK captured UK CVR, or I can't forget which one the Samaritan is, probably a medical version. M113 APC there, and a couple of Max Pro MRAP. So nothing crazy high value on the Ukrainian side. In the APCs, tanks, IFVs, they are all destroyed, abandoned, or captured, apart from that one T-72 that's damaged. And again, Lancets. Lancets are a massive issue at the moment. They really have come back and they're being used an awful lot. So Russia have obviously really upped their production of Lancets. And yeah, they're getting them to the front lines and using them an awful lot. If you look at the Russian losses, there's an awful lot of destroyed vehicles there, so a heavy proportion of destroyed against damage. So that's good news for the Ukrainians. When we look at the top of the list, we've got a couple of electronic warfare systems, a Lear 3 and a Strij 3. So that's going to be good news for the Ukrainians. They need to do a lot of electronic warfare degradation. One destroyed, one damaged. Recovery vehicle, Prem 1, another one taken out. We've got a number of tanks, including a T-90 destroyed, T-90M. So that's the best Russian tank, really. Destroyed there, unknown cause. Infantry fighting vehicles, the usual array of those. We've got some BMDs in there as well, BMP 1s and 2s, BTRs. Armoured personnel carriers, MRAPs, so VPK Euro, trucks, ATVs, and civilian vehicles. So all the usual kind of bits of kit there. The Russians will have had a worse day of it. Just the mass of their equipment compared to the Ukrainians there means that's a better day for the Ukrainians than for the Russians. And then here, the latest stats list, loss list from Andrew indicates that the Ukrainians, as mentioned, have lost about 1 to every 2 Russian vehicles. So pretty good, but not really good enough. And then look at the Lancets. Look at these Lancets, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so a dozen Lancet losses there. That is the highest number of Lancets I've seen for a long time. That, again, tells you a story. Okay, recovery vehicle from the Ukrainians now damaged. Humvee with a RAK-12. So I think that's rocket launchers on the back. BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system. SPG of unknown variety M777, and then a couple of AHS Crabs. These are the South Korean Polish cooperative self-propelled gun. A couple of those damaged, so on and so forth. Damaged Bradley, and then a PBV 501A infantry fighting vehicle abandoned. Don't even know what that is. I've not seen that yet. Civilian vehicles, an ATV, and then we get down to a couple of decoys and an unknown tank from one of the sides. So some fairly heavy losses for the Ukrainians in terms of artillery there, both multiple launch rocket systems and so a couple of Crabs there that are decent self-propelled guns. They're not going to like that. Russians losing just a little bit more, but yeah, both sides fairly challenging day, I guess. Now, when it comes to aircraft, so there was one listed on the general staff figures. We have the claim that there was a Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter taken down near Avdiivka yesterday. That is good news for the Ukrainians. They haven't taken any helicopter down for a long time, particularly Ka-52. A lot of people asking, are the Russians still using Ka-52s? Yes, there is still footage you can find of Ka-52s doing their thing. I don't know if they're using them slightly less, because you got to remember the Russians will have had their behaviour change. They would have changed their behaviour in terms of how they use these airframes due to ATACMS being on the patch and having taken out several accumulations of helicopters at Berdyansk, at Luhansk, and then. You know, we've had Jankoy hit a number of times, probably had some airframes damaged or taken out there. So, yeah, I'm sure you are seeing them less or they have less airtime due to their logistics being affected and longer flight times or time to get to their objective area. So, yeah, There was also a claim yesterday of a Su-25 being taken down in Donetsk Oblast as well. So good day for the Ukrainians in terms of taking out some airframes. The Russians have lost now, was it three jets in the last week or so? So that is pretty good for the Ukrainians there. Andrew Perpetua just has a rant here. This is, I think this is worth talking about. So, for the love of God, stop shooting and scooting. It doesn't work. I don't care what internet morons say. You lose your gun every single time. God damn it. The crap I've seen this week, he says, if I see another person defend shoot and scoot, I'm going to punch him in the teeth. I just love that. So he says shoot and scoot doesn't work. It's not a thing. My position on shoot and scoot is it is a thing, or is it, at least it was a thing. I think it's been severely, and I think Andrew would agree here, it's been severely affected by drone usage. So before this war, shoot and scoot was completely relevant due to the main method of shooting or taking out an artillery piece that is just fired is through counter battery fire. So you're in an arch, or you've got an M777. You drive up, you take it off the back of the vehicle, you set it up, you then fire at the enemy, and maybe you fire a number of times, and then you're thinking, oh my goodness, I can't be bothered to move this, or it takes too much effort. And then the enemy can track the trajectory of your shell, work out where it's been fired from using physics, and then hit you back with counter battery fire. So the weakness there is overcome. It's mitigated by the ability to shoot and scoot. Now, obviously, if you've got something like an Archer or similar self-propelled gun, one on tracks or on wheels, you can fire off a few rounds and then drive away. And you get away from counter battery fire, and that's brilliant. So you shoot, you drive around, you shoot, you drive around, you shoot, you drive around. Jobs are good, and that's your day done. And you are safe. And so that's how it would have mainly been done before February 2022. Well, we have seen elements of this in the Azerbaijan conflict as well, with the use of drones starting. I think that was one of the places where we started to see drones be used more frequently. But now we've seen this conflict evolve. We have seen the usage of drones evolve. That what you have now is that moving is the dangerous part. So there aren't so many counter battery radars. A lot of them been degraded, and so what happens is you fire your gun, and then if you then scoot, it's the movement that allows you to be seen by drones. So drones are all up in the air, they're looking everywhere, and it's much easier to see movement rather than a towed howitzer, which has a smaller footprint, is arguably more advantageous right now because you can hide that away more effectively. You can dig revetments, so you can even dig like little sort of, I don't know, dugouts for them, and you can even cover them over to some degree. You can fire these things and then keep them hidden. Not moving them allows you safety from those drones that are looking all over the shop for movement. Good camouflage and maybe some coat cages around it for Lancet attacks is now the order of the day. And so this is what Andrew Perpetua is saying. Stop shooting and scooting, because actually with drones being used so much, it is dangerous to shoot and scoot, more dangerous than staying still. So we have this evolution now, and you're wondering whether people back in the design rooms for the procurement, the people looking at the military strategies for what kit you're going to need going forward, might be rethinking how you do artillery. Like the US might be thinking, goodness me, actually, yeah, towed howitzers do still have a place. We were going HIMARS, we were going, SPGs, or other armies were thinking SPGs, but not necessarily the most useful right now. I guess there's a good argument surrounding that. Right. This is a bit of a count-up, an OSINT count-up of what's been lost in the Kharkiv direction. And you can see that there are some pieces of kit that people are saying, how about that? When there are 5 bits found, some north of the border, some were saying, what about those? I think, this is anything after the 10th. And then there were arguments about whether some of it was old or not. So some of these figures, they might be a little bit higher for the Russians, but basically the Ukrainians having lost more than the Russians here. So 5 BMPs, 1 IMR-2 combat engineering vehicle. So 6 vehicles there. And the Ukrainians have had a tank, a YPR, so an M113 basically, Humvee, multiple launch rockets, 2 Bogdanas, self-propelled guns, and a Book 1 Telar, so a transporter, rector launcher, and radar for the Book, using modified RIM 7. So that was a Frankensam. So the Ukrainians lost quite a lot. The count, 7 pieces isn't like massive, but compared to the Russians, you would hope, being if you're pro-Ukrainian, that the Russians would be having a harder time of it. So this count specifically includes all equipment losses since May the 10th, documented in 2 northern districts in Kharkiv Oblast, as well as Belgorod Oblast in Russia. So that might change as visual evidence comes out. There are claims from the Ukrainians that they have given the Russians a really hard time, that Russians have lost a lot of stuff. Well, they've taken huge losses, but that might be more on the personnel side than the equipment. So it could just be that they are attacking with not meat assaults, but infantry-led assaults. And talking about Lancets, they seem to be the soup du jour, really, in terms of what the Russians are using. The Russians' North Group of Forces have published a number of videos, says Rob Lee, showing Lancet loitering munition strikes over the past few days, including a strike on 2 Bogdana howitzers. The results of most of the strikes at night are unclear. So there's a lot of footage, not all necessarily like destroyed stuff, but the Lancet is being really effectively used. And I guess with the longer range of the Lancet, so normally at the beginning of the war, you would have seen these be used to take out bits of kit much further back from the front line because of the range of the Lancet being better than the first person view drones and whatnot. So there'd be, tens of kilometers behind the front line, even taking out airframes at Mykolaiv airbase, for example. Whereas now, I think you're starting to see these get used on the front line. And I guess it makes sense from the north, where, you can sit safely in Russian territory and send off your Lancets from quite far back and take out Ukrainian equipment that is defending those northern borders. Right, just a few things to add in terms of Russian approach to, I guess, humans. Russia's first channel, as in that's the name of it, openly urges Russian servicemen, quote, not to wait for the drone, but to commit suicide themselves. Quote, the significance of life is exaggerated, the propagandist argues, and he says that killing yourself on the battlefield is not suicide, but sacrifice. Well, that's nice. Nice of you to offer other people to do that. How about you? So anyway, as Sergey, stop it, you're sitting in the studio and the guys are, So yes, now someone might say to you, stop it, Sergey, you're sitting in the studio and the guys are in the trenches. He says, well, what's he going to say? But we exaggerate the meaning of life. Do we? Really interested for you to... I'm really just happy that you're talking for me. I can't be bothered to think. So that's great. And the meaning of life. Yeah, I'm glad you are dictating what my meaning of life is. That subjective thing that I have, where I find meaning. I'm glad that you are just imposing that on me. Brilliant, Sergey. You prized twit. That's it, he says, just simple as that. And all this theology that we've decided now, we'll write the Catechism of the Warrior, because we have to explain to the guys that when a guy is lying there waiting for a drone hit, he'd rather kill himself. He'd better not expect to become disabled. That's a best case scenario. At worst, it's a painful death. Why? Why are they afraid? Because they hadn't been told it's not suicide. And it's not suicide. Christ may not have hung on the cross either. It's a sacrifice to give your life for your country, for your people, for God, for the church. And that's why all needs to be written and explained. I could write some stuff and explain it to you. But it would probably end up with, jog on, Sergey. Your opinions aren't welcome around here. Anyway, just to add to that, let's go. Anton Gerashenko says, Alexei Milchakov, a war criminal, co-leader and co-founder of the Rusik group that operated from 2022 within the Wagner group, calls for the killing of prisoners of war. He says that he hasn't taken Ukrainian prisoners since 2014, but killed them right away. Milchakov is known for torturing and executing Ukrainian prisoners of war. He has repeatedly been photographed against a backdrop of dead Ukrainian soldiers. Russians, they are lovely people, aren't they? Although, I don't want to broad brush all of Russia here. That's something I'm very reluctant to do. But I have to say, they appear to have far more egregious opinions than other people. Anyway, we have here steamship on fire. Steamship MV Lomonosov caught fire in Arkhangelsk region. Ministry of Emergency Situations says 40 firefighters are trying to extinguish the blaze. Now, I don't know if this is some old-fashioned steamship that is, just more of a tourist thing or what's going on there. But just, man, the amount of fires that happen in Russia are just insane. Anyway, that's something else burning big time. Right, we go to distance strikes and whatnot. We have 18 drones being fired into Ukraine by Russia overnight. Each of them was shot down, apparently, so that's good news, 100% ratio. In fact, Ukrainians are doing a good job of shooting drones down. The last month's stats for missile shoot-downs was 30%. There's a real sort of divergence of the two there, and I think Ukraine have got in place some pretty good systems for shooting down drones. They've got a lot of Gepards, a lot of anti-air air defense groups that drive around with trucks and machine guns. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And then, of course, the surface-to-air sort of missile systems, not your big Patriots and whatnot, but your Super Cats with ASRAMs and other things like that. So I think they've got the drones thing not sewn up, but it is under control a lot more. But the missiles, Russia, and in fact, Colby Badwar was talking about this, saying exactly what I've been saying the last few days, which is that the way that Russia are using missiles, the type of missiles they're using, and the lack of interceptors are playing a role in that 30% statistic. So hopefully, as the Western aid comes through to Ukraine, you'll start seeing that number tick up for interception rates. But the Russians are still using missiles that the Ukrainians are still going to struggle to shoot down unless they get more Patriot systems, because they just fire things like Kinzhals and Iskanders into places where the Ukrainians don't have Patriots, and the Ukrainians are going to really struggle to shoot them down. Maybe SAMT can do that, but essentially, yeah, it's a real challenge. A couple of stats here from Tim White. So yesterday evening, Russia claimed it shot down 16 rockets over Belgorod. More smoke appeared soon after. Another air warning is underway now too. He said yesterday evening, 6:30 my time. And then this morning, Russia claims it shot down 25 rockets over Belgorod. So I presume that is 16 and 25. So I presume that the Ukrainians are just sending a lot of stuff into Belgorod. How much success that is having in taking out legitimate military targets, I don't know. The air defenses are going to be very active, which will end up causing munitions to come down in residential areas, as you can see from some of the photos. ATACMS have been used yesterday. They've broken through Russian air defense in temporarily occupied Luhansk. So that looks like quite a few ATACMS being sent. I presume they're all ATACMS. That's the implication there. Well, goodness me, that is a lot of ATACMS. Quite what those missiles did, I don't know. There is this claim in Luhansk. The head of the occupiers Luhansk, in Luhansk, Leonid Pazachnik, admits today's attack hit a machine building plant used for military purposes, but said there was a civilian facility. ATACMS are believed to have destroyed military gear outside the front of the factory. So that's at least one of the places where ATACMS were sent. But obviously there looks like there were a few more than just that one flying through the air. Now, this is John Ridge, bit of a missile expert, talking about. Let's go to what OSINT Technical says first, and we'll come back to John Ridge. OSINT Technical states that Ukrainian OTR-21 Tochka tactical ballistic missile launch, and he thinks that that's a new bit of footage of a Tochka. These were used early on in the war, and it was thought that they had run out of Tochkas, and then they occasionally use them. Quite old school, fairly big bits of kit. What appears to be a new video, he says, presumably filmed this spring, indicates Ukraine may have a new supply of the missiles. And John Ridge says, well, rather than an external source or rather than a new supply of them, it's more likely the Ukraine has continued to recondition and refurbish existing stocks of previously unusable 9M79 missiles. Ukraine inherited 600 to 700 of these missiles from the Soviet Union. So it could be that they have a pretty decent stock of these ballistic missiles, but they just need to be worked on quite a bit to get them up to usable levels as their old Soviet stock. So it could be that the Ukrainians are in a position to use more of them going forward. Now, there's been a drone strike on a railway, or on a train actually. 9 carriages of a Russian freight train have been derailed. A diesel fuel tank and a lumber car, caught fire in the Russian Volgograd region, according to Russian media. First, it was reported that the reason the train derailment was interference by outsiders in the work of the railway, which is suitably vague. However, Russian Telegram channels claim that interference meant a drone attack. Is this the first time I'm being aware of a drone attack on a train, moving train? So Special Kherson Kat here says a drone attack of a Russian freight train in the village of Samofilovka, Volgograd region, 470 kilometers from the front line. As a result of the drone attack, 2 cars with fuel caught fire, 1 tank exploded, and the location is here. So, a fair distance from near the Volga, the River Volga, a fair distance from Ukraine. Interesting that they're choosing to do that, and that will be a bit of an effort to clear that up. You're going to have probably a couple of railways there taken out for at least some time before that gets cleared up, but also that rolling stock and the cargo it's carrying. So that I would say that's a pretty good strike for the Ukrainians there. Right, on to other bits and pieces. We are now going to talk about Budanov, so head of Ukrainian intelligence. He's been in the New York Times, so to set what's going on here. The head of the main intelligence department of Ukraine says that the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to stabilize the situation at the front in the next few days, so particularly Kharkiv there. Russian attacks in the Kharkiv region will continue for 3 or more days, he said, after which Russian troops are expected to make a decisive advance toward Sumy. Now, I was wondering whether this would actually happen. I don't know if that's the correct translation or the way he meant that, but rather than those attackers moving towards Sumy, I think it's those troops near Sumy Oblast to the north of there in the Kursk region of Russia then might attack down. So it's kind of what they do along the front lines of what they have been doing, which is attack here, attack there, these pulses where they're trying to feel out the Ukrainian defences. Now they've extended the front line to Kharkiv, and they could well extend it in Sumy as well and do the same kind of thing up there. But it might not be to take some major settlement like Sumy, like the city of Sumy, but to give buffer zones, to stretch the Ukrainians. As Budanov goes on to say in the New York Times, the situation is on the edge. The purpose of this offensive is to stretch the already meager reserves of Ukrainian soldiers and distract them from participating in hostilities in other regions. And again, it comes back to that same calculation, which is if you got 50,000 troops or 30,000 or however many they're piling into Kharkiv and Sumy, are you better using all of those troops to divert probably far fewer Ukrainian troops to defend those border areas and equipment, so that you can attack over there and have an advantage? Say Kupiansk have an advantage, a ratio advantage, because Ukrainians have been drawn away from there. Or is it not better just taking those 50,000, 30,000 troops and putting them in Kupiansk, and then you've got that advantage? And also, you're not having to come across new fortifications, new minefields. Hopefully some of those fortifications and minefields have been already exhausted. I don't know that this is the best way to gain that ratio advantage, which is effectively what this can boil down to. I don't know. You let me know. And unsurprisingly, in classic liberation behaviour, the Russian soldiers going across the border into Kharkiv what are they doing? Oh yeah, they're looting and pillaging. Well done, Russia. Anyway, they entered Burvatka in Kharkiv, the Kharkiv Vovchansk axis, and immediately started looting and pillaging local houses. Oh dear. Right, a little bit more information on the whole Shoigu-Patrushev thing. So Shoigu moved into the role of Patrushev, which is head of the security advisory to Putin. You could argue it's a step up. You could argue it's a step sideways. You could even argue it's a step down. Depends how you read that. But he's been moved from the defense minister to that position. And then we've had your man from the Belousov, from being an economy minister to being the defense minister. Some people are arguing whether that's good or bad for Ukraine. So on the one hand, he's not a military man. And not being a military man, he will not bring military expertise to his role. But he's not prosecuting the war. So that's Gerasimov. Okay, that's someone else. There are lots of rumours that Gerasimov's going to be on the way out. You've had people in the MOD cleared out. You've had the 2IC who has gone to, what was his name, Timur Ivanov, and a third in charge, I think, is being investigated, detained. So, yeah, you've got Shoigu moved sideways and this guy coming in. But he's coming in because I think, and this is a challenge, I think it's on balance a challenge to Ukraine, because he's coming in with a knowledge of the economy, of innovation, of working with the private sector, possibly. So trying to work in tandem with the state and private sectors to get equipment, expedite that equipment that is needed, that is fit for purpose to the Russian soldiers. I think that would improve for the Russians with that person in charge of the MOD. And that then becomes a heightened challenge for Ukraine, because I don't think Shoigu was doing anything at all, really. And then Shoigu, because he's not so much out of favour, like they needed to change something in the MOD, but Shoigu's really loyal to Putin and Putin likes him. So he wants to keep him around, so he's moved him there. And then you've got Patrushev now and Dyumin, who is another person who's been touted. They've been appointed as aides to the president as part of the presidential administration. Dyumin was dismissed from his role of governor of Tula. So we can wonder what's going on there. Former Russian Security Council secretary reappointed as Putin's aide, and whether this, my read on this is that Patrushev might be being lined up to be the replacement for Putin. So rather than getting rid of Patrushev, it's putting him into a role where he's just really close to Putin. And if Putin has health issues or something happens to Putin, then you might have Patrushev slipping into that role, which is something that has long been rumoured anyway. Like Patrushev has been seen as Putin's replacement. Now, here's an opinion from Kamil Galiyev. Whoever. The army is coup optimized, and Belousov's candidature was almost certainly picked for the coup proofing. What this means is they've taken someone as an economy minister, or I don't know if he was the minister for economy, and brought him into the MOD, but it means that he's not going to be a military man who is susceptible to doing a coup or a mutiny, right? Someone like Prigozhin, someone like Surovikin, even Toplinsky, people like that who have had slightly charged relationship with the structures of the MOD and have actually fallen foul, each of those three at different points. Prigozhin tried that mutiny, fell out of a plane. Surovikin's been sent to Algeria. These are people that you wouldn't want to put in charge of the MOD because they're much more susceptible to do something like a coup, right? But you take the economy minister in and you put him in charge of the MOD. He's got no kind of military mutiny background or experience of contemplating anything like that. And that is really, really important. So this is Putin making quite a safe bet here. It's quite clever. So he's a Muscovite, so no strong power base, alien to the government, politically isolated, and no military background. I think this made him look much less dangerous coup-wise. And yeah, I would agree with that analysis. At the same time, Putin's purge continues elsewhere. So the FSB has arrested the MOD personnel director. So I already talked about the 2IC and then the 3IC, but a former head of the State Secrets Protection Service, Lieutenant General Yuri Kuznetsov. I give Gerasimov 2 to 3 weeks, says Tim White. This could actually be an FSB power play with Putin willing to back his old buddies. So there are machinations going on behind the scenes, all sorts of power plays, but I think it's probably insulating Putin just that little bit more. Counterintelligence of the SBU has prevented 4 terrorist attacks in Kyiv that were supposed to take place on May 9th. I talked about this the other day, but now there's video evidence of this that has come out. So, as a result of a multi-stage special operation in the capital, agents of the Russian game were detained who installed explosive devices in the construction hypermarkets of a well-known chain and near one of the cafes. According to the available data, improvised explosive devices were disguised in tea packages. They consisted of a timer, a detonator, and plastic explosives with an incendiary mixture that was supposed to cause large-scale fires. According to the plan of the Russian special services, the explosives were to be detonated during the peak hours of hypermarkets in order to cause maximum damage to the civilian population. In addition, it was planned to take place among flammable materials so that such a fire could not be extinguished quickly. Another terrorist attack was supposed to take place near a popular Kyiv cafe. Russian agents wanted to plant explosive devices in a car parked nearby. I can't talk to the accuracy of these, but you do have claims of catching these people on CCTV, like putting their explosives in place, and then the security services catching them. So here they are, the CCTV of them catching them, and doing something dodgy there, and then finding the explosives hidden away. So there you go, in tea canisters hidden away. So that has been foiled. Luckily, if that indeed is the truth, that's been foiled by the Ukrainian SPU, and good news there. Okay, that's enough for me for this video. I'm going to get on with the mapping. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.